Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. My name is Maludi Gracia, and I serve as an NXT Unite team member at Nexus Marketing and your moderator for today's panel. Today's panel topic is marketing magic, upgrades to your nonprofit's marketing strategies. And as usual, before I introduce today's panelists and we jump into this fascinating topic, I do have some quick logistics to cover. NXT Unite by Nexus Marketing serves as a powerful community resource designed to foster connections and facilitate lasting relationships within the mission-driven sector. On NXT Unite, you can find upcoming industry events, suggested influencers to follow, trusted solutions, and cost-driven podcasts. NXT Unite also hosts webinars, demos, and of course, panels with experts such as these lovely folks with me here today. Today's hour-long panel will include time both for questions curated by my team and questions from you all, our lovely audience. At any time during the panel, please feel free to submit your questions via the questions tab, where you can drop them in the chat if you want. And we'll spend the second half of the panel addressing as many as we possibly can. Now, if you're having any technical difficulties or have any logistics questions, my team member Anton will be in the chat under the Team NXT Unite username, ready to assist you the best he can. I also wanted to share that this panel is being recorded, so people can continue to register and access the recording after the panel. If you have any friends in the industry you want to share the insights from this panel with, simply send them that same registration page and they will be able to access the recording. Finally, before I introduce today's panelists, I want to thank you all for attending this panel, whether you're attending live or watching the recording. We're very excited to be in touch with you, the mission-driven community. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today to learn from these outstanding experts who I will now finally introduce. I'd like to first introduce Erik Rubadeau, who is the founder and CEO at Yeeboo Digital, a data-driven, full-service online fundraising and technology agency. Erik is an experienced digital strategist, online fundraiser, and nonprofit technology specialist. Thanks for joining us, Erik.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Also with us today is Ira Harowitz, who is the co-founder at Corner Shop Creative. They're all about helping organizations make the most out of the web. With over 20 years of experience, Ira is an expert in nonprofit digital communications and digital fundraising, and his work has resulted in increased funds and resounding supporter engagement for hundreds of organizations. Thank you so much for joining us, Ira.
Thanks. Looking forward to talking more today.
Also with us is Jason Ellinger, who is the co-founder at Beard and Bowler Productions, a commercial filmmaking and creative company that helps nonprofits raise funds and awareness through the power of storytelling via video. Jason is a husband to a beautiful wife and father to an amazing 2-year-old. Thank you so much for joining us, Jason.
Thank you. And they just FaceTimed me today, so wanted to let them know I was speaking right now. Say hi. I'll talk to you later.
All right. And finally with us is Jesse Lane, who is the founder and CEO at Branches Mission Lab and Goodmaker U. He's worked in the nonprofit and ministry space for over a decade and helped raise over $100 million. Through his work, Jesse has helped thousands of nonprofits and ministries grow their reach, raise more money, and have greater impact. So great to have you, Jesse.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks.
All right, now it's finally time to hear from our panelists. And Ira, I'll have you start us off with the first question. In today's rapidly changing digital landscape, what are some key trends or shifts that nonprofits should be aware of when upgrading their marketing strategies?
Yeah, thanks again. And this is an excellent question to start off with. I think there's so much that is changing. Obviously, as new tools and strategies come out, you need to think of how that's going to impact and how you're going to focus within your nonprofit. The trends that I see happening most frequently, or that we seem to be focusing more on, is a lot with automation of doing things simpler, of things that used to take a long time to do on your website or email marketing tool are now just built into that platform and are a lot simpler to take advantage of. And using various things, especially with your marketing email marketing platform, of making sure that you're doing the right cadence, that when people are taking action, that they're not just getting that one response, that they're getting a series, they're being welcomed, they're being told their whole story, and being brought into everything with your organization. And then related to that, we do focus a lot on A/B testing these days, as supporters' attitudes and behaviors are always constantly changing. And so to stay ahead of that, asking them or testing what's going to work best. We were just on a call right before this where a client has a very large pink donation form on their homepage that's right, you can't miss it. It's very pink and fluorescent and easy to see. But we did want to test and see, is that the best use? Is that too overwhelming? And do we want to see if there's other ways we can attract people and get them engaged and get them to that donation form? And so always A/B testing and thinking of different ways that you can engage your supporters is always an effective strategy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for starting us off, Ira. Jesse, I'm going to bring the same question over to you. What are some key trends nonprofits should be aware of when upgrading their marketing strategies?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's really hard to talk about trends without talking about AI right now, and just how that's changing our world and definitely impacting marketers and nonprofits. And for us, we're using it every day in lots of different ways, and it's and we're learning a lot. I think the primary ways that I see it impacting marketers is in research, ideation, content creation, and even in editing quite a bit. We're using that for editing copy and producing first drafts or editing our first drafts. And so I feel like if you're not out there testing, if you're not using tools and experimenting, then you need to be. At least there's free tools, there's opportunities to be learning. And yes, it's changing rapidly, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't jump in and kind of learn as this technology evolves and changes. So I think that's the first thing I would say. Obviously, there's a lot of tools with AI baked in. There's it's in Canva now, so we all have access, I think, to be testing it out and trying it. And so I would just encourage nonprofits to be doing that. So that's one of the biggest trends I would see. So I could talk about others, but that's the one that I feel like so many of us are just dealing with on a daily basis.
Thanks, Jesse. All right, Jason, over to you. Any key trends that nonprofits need to be aware of, especially when integrating video and content production into marketing strategies?
Yes. Thank you, Jesse, for that. Speaking of AI, I popped this question into ChatGTP to just see what it would crank out. Mm-hmm. And in particular for video and storytelling, we got live streaming for engagement, authentic storytelling, short form video, collaborations with influencers and partnerships, right? And optimize mobile and use captions. So two of my favorites on here, we are storytellers and we're authentic storytellers. So we work with real people testimonials. So that's a favorite of mine. Personally, we have launched YouTube Shorts this past year, and the short form content is performing so much better than a long form. And we're seeing a lot of, especially with the vertical video, which as a filmmaker and an artist is painful to say, like vertical video, right? But we have to meet people where they're at, and maybe they're at home or at work and they don't want to turn their phone sideways because it could be disruptive and people are like, oh, this guy's definitely watching a video, right? So the vertical with the captions to meet people where they're at, make it quick, hook them in the first 3 seconds, right? Those are my top two, is the short form content and the authentic, real people storytelling are just trending hard right now.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jason. All right, Erik, final thoughts on trends or shifts that nonprofits need to be aware of when upgrading marketing strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some really good stuff brought out here, whether it's A/B testing, the AI, the authentic storytelling, like all these things are so key. One of the things I think that can be really helpful, because it's, is to think about, with all of their, there's a new platform all the time, right? Like Threads comes out. Do we care about this? X seems to be going, Twitter is X, right? Like where are these platforms going? The most important thing to think about as platforms come and go, as trends come and go, is where are your people? If you can figure out where your people are, you can figure out how to make your marketing effective. If you don't know where your people are, you're spending money, effort, initiative in possibly an empty room. So thinking through, as we think about all these trends, where are, like, having clear definition about who your audience is, how, defining those personas early on in your game is going to help you figure through, like, are my people on Threads? Are my people on Instagram? Are my people in TikTok? And from there you can figure out how do you resonate the message? How do you use these, use AI to make, great new copy, short form, videos. Like there's so many cool things. I was just the other day, I made a radio ad using a cool new AI tool. I'm not an audio producer, but it just gave me the ability to quickly produce something to kind of say, oh, this is something I want to take this thing in my head and make it, and that would have been really hard for me before. So these tools are great, but it's just, you got to know what you kind of want to produce and where your people are.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Erik. All right, I'm actually going to stick with you for our next question. Effective marketing often involves a mix of storytelling, data-driven decisions, and audience engagement. How can nonprofits strike the right balance between these elements to maximize impact?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things you see organizations do, as an agency, and Bella's with me here today, probably I'll see it from the outside as well, is organizations can spend a lot of time, not taking something to market, talking about it, building it up, getting it all perfectly ready to go, and then it flops. It doesn't do what you thought it was going to do. So for me, effective marketing, and I forget who it was earlier, I don't know if it was Jason or Jesse, but maybe it was Ira, sorry. But this idea of taking something and testing it, right? Like taking it to the market. One of the things we do in our campaigns is we always run a small, like, let's just put this in the, in the market and make sure that, it gets some traction, that somebody actually, is interested in engaging with what we've produced. So, from my perspective, don't spend too long, perfecting this thing. Get it good enough, get it out the door, dip your toe in it, take it to your audience, and let the data, let the audience, let the people tell you whether that's going to work for you or work for them or not. I think a lot of organizations, you just see it, spend a lot of time getting it just right, and then are really disappointed when it doesn't hit. Where then, if they kind of cut that time in half, gotten something to a point, put it into market, tested, learned, brought it back, and then iterated, and then put it back again. It's probably a little bit of a better pattern. So in terms of striking that balance, you want to use the data to learn, but you also you don't want to shortcut, but you also don't want to spend so long on it that it doesn't really you don't have any time left to reiterate or to iterate. Sorry, when you need to.
Thanks, Erik. All right, Jason, over to you. How can nonprofits strike the right balance to maximize their impact when it comes to content?
Yeah, so as far as data and storytelling, what we found is it works, but it's kind of the background of which the story happens. And a lot of times it should be written. And we get approached all the time. Most of my discovery calls with nonprofits are, no, we're not going to interview all 27 of your board members. Great, 40th anniversary, awesome, nobody cares. That's all stuff that can go in the copy. Like data turns an audience cold if you don't use it right in a story or sandwich between problem and solution. So use that data to inform what you're speaking to, but you really need to make an emotional connection with people. And you do that by telling a story of how you help someone get from point A to point B, and don't focus too much on the data when it comes to your storytelling. But yes, I totally agree with Erik. Get it out there, A/B test. I think it's the lean startup or $100 startup, which was great at this, to just get it out there and test and retest. And I was listening to something recently where some guy was banned on TikTok, so he made YouTube Shorts instead, and he released, I think, 674 YouTube Shorts on YouTube, right? 675 is where it took off and got him like 150,000 subscribers. You could be like one post, one video away from it, but you don't know if you're not out there testing or if you're just holding on to it. So agreed with Erik, but double down and make sure in your storytelling, don't overload it with data, stats, figures can turn an audience cold.
Thanks for sharing, Jason. All right, Ira, same question over to you. How can nonprofits strike a balance in storytelling, data-driven decisions, and audience engagement to maximize impact?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think actually there's not even necessarily a trade-off in a lot of these things. I think a lot of times, that audience engagement is your goal. You want people to be engaged with you. You want them to interact. And therefore, data and storytelling can kind of support that making sure that you're using the data that you know about your audience to appropriately create this right story and create the right marketing materials that are going to attract people and get them engaged and working with you. So I don't think there's necessarily a trade-off necessarily, but really utilizing and understanding all these things to understand your audience so that you can be presenting them with the right calls to actions and different ways that you can start engaging them so that they're going to be supporters for you in the long term.
Gotcha.
Thanks, Ira.
Okay.
Jesse, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a trick question, and Ira just nailed it by saying that, yeah, they all work together. There's not a trade-off. And maybe another way to say it is the data is in, storytelling is the best form of communication, and it produces audience engagement, right? Like it's going to work. And so I think nonprofits should say, I should be the best storyteller in the world. Like this is a skill that all nonprofits should be developing, because the data is in, it works. You can continue to measure, and you should. We say, test it, track it, tweak it, right? And then repeat, test it, track it, tweak it. You're constantly doing that, but storytelling is a proven strategy. Humans are storytellers. We love stories. We know we can retell them, we can remember them, and they immediately take something like the impact that you have and make it concrete and believable and real. And so telling that one individual story is the best way you can communicate. So if you don't feel confident or you don't have a story in your back pocket at any given moment about your organization, then that's your first priority. Go have that. And not only that, but every board member, every staff member, every advocate, they need a story to tell. And so make sure you're training and teaching everyone, hey, here's a story, go tell it. That's the best way. I'd rather a board member know a story than the mission statement every single day. Like that's going to be more powerful. And so equip people with story, and the awareness, everything else will just naturally happen as the story spread, because that's what stories do.
Fantastic insight, Jesse. All right, very quickly, I'd like to remind our live audience to start submitting your questions at any time so we can address the topics that are relevant to you and your team. All right, here's our next question. And Jason, I'll have you start us off with this one. What are some innovative approaches or tools that nonprofits can leverage to reach new audiences and engage their existing supporters more effectively?
So we already have some established mediums at our disposal. For instance, print mailing is more effective than it has been in the past decade, probably because a lot of people have left it, right? Text messaging, you read 100% of the texts that you get. The shorter the text, the better. If you're not leveraging like GIFs and embedded video that plays right in your email, and there are sites that can do this for you, you might be missing out on a touch point. Sit down with your director of development, your executive director, 30 seconds on an iPhone, thank people for what they've done this year. It takes maybe 30 seconds to make a meaningful connection with somebody via some of the mediums that you already have.
Thanks, Jason. All right, Erik, over to you. Any insights on innovative approaches or tools to reach new audiences and engage existing supporters?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it was Jesse that was saying, you know, like AI, we got to think about AI. AI is great because it's, you know, I mean, everybody's talking about it right now. ChatGPT just continues to roll out features, and there's so many other things. I was sort of alluding to this audio clip I made the other day. I was just, you know, I was like, I wonder if there's a tool for that. So I started doing a little bit of look around, found this thing called Murf, MURF.ai. Super easy to use. I made a commercial in like, you know, half an hour from scratch, not knowing how to use it. You know, so there's tools out there that allow us to sort of spin up these kind of rough ideas for storytelling. But the things that the tools really should be doing is taking away like the time suck tasks, because, you know, it was I think it was Jason that was saying, like, we don't want to use tools and technology like to thank our donors. Like we want to use, you know, we want to use our human connections for that. But, you know, using tools to like automate a little bit of data movement, yeah, that's uninteresting tactical tasks. Anywhere we can use automation, anywhere we can use AI, anywhere we can use, you know, we can leverage the system, so to speak, to help us accomplish our jobs better. If it's because you know, we want to leverage technology and tools to speed up that part of our life so that we have more time to engage in like the things that AI and computers can't do for us very well, which is, you know, engaging and communicating and connecting with people who are going to care about our cause. So, you know, I think if we can think about like how you know, if you audit how your day goes and you find that it's like, wow, I spent a lot of time in Excel today, that's a thing you can probably use tools for and speed up your process and that kind of stuff. So you've got more time in your day for, you know, for connecting with people.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eric. All right, Jesse, over to you. Anything you want to add to innovative approaches or tools in reaching and engaging audiences?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to take a different approach on this, actually. Instead of listing more tools, which I did make a list of that, I think an innovative approach that I want to always encourage nonprofits to take is just to shift their mindset completely. I think nonprofits often fall into this scarcity mindset, or the status quo mindset of like, we don't have a big enough budget or a big enough team to be innovative. I'm just trying to survive, right? I'm just trying to get enough funds to keep going or to put out the fires. And I get that. It's tough. A lot of nonprofits are small teams and small budgets, but I think the mindset shift of saying, you know, the status quo isn't good enough. Yes, we need to be creative. We can be scrappy. We can find affordable ways to get creative, to tell stories, whether it's using innovative tools or just kind of innovative approaches, innovative ways of tackling, inviting people to give in, you know, with their powerful vision and their, like you said, stories. I think that is an innovative mindset and approach that is going to help them stand out in a world of nonprofits who are saying, yeah, I can't do that, or I'm not even going to try to be innovative. Is just at least identifying themselves. That's why we call we call nonprofits good makers, because I mean, who wants to be known for their tax status, really, right? It's like nonprofit, right? It's not super exciting. Nonprofit, right? It's like, so we call nonprofits good makers, and the idea is like, be known for what you're doing, the good you're doing in the world. You're making good, you're changing things. And so just kind of accepting that identity is innovative. And for nonprofits to start saying, I can be creative and innovative. And in fact, these limitations I have, small budget, small team, allow for even more creativity and innovation to be birthed out of that. And exciting things can happen with that mindset shift. So that's what I would say.
Thanks, Jesse. All right, Iro, we want to hear from you as well. What would you like to add?
Yeah, I feel like everybody said it all, and definitely I agree a lot with what Jesse was just saying there of being creative, being innovative. I think is very important when you're trying to engage your supporters. I think there's a lot of great campaigns. One of my favorite campaigns we've done at Corner Shop was for assistance guide dog organization where they primarily raise labs. So what we did is we ran a campaign called Black Lab Friday, where they generated stuff leading up to Black Friday. And it was a hugely successful campaign all around those marketing materials and that just simple phrase. And so the one thing that I always encourage nonprofits to do is, or good makers to do, is to really focus on what your audience is looking for, how you're going to connect with them most effectively, and come up with a creative and simple message that's going to help you kind of stand out and apart from other tools. And then the tactics to actually implement them. There's dozens of tools out there that exist. Some of the a lot of great tools are incorporating AI into it, things like Canva and Photoshop, where you can more easily create and generate images that look unique or stand out and are specific to your campaign with very little effort. As well as things with SMS platforms and peer-to-peer. It's just become a lot easier with all these tools out there to communicate and market your campaigns to your supporters.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ira. All right, Jesse, here's our next question. And I know you kind of answered this in your last answer, but nonprofits often have limited budgets. How can they prioritize their marketing efforts to ensure that they get the most from their resources when upgrading their strategies?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much I could say on this, but I would just say don't waste money with a confusing message. So if the confused mind always says no. Erik said this earlier, I think, but if you got to know who your audience is and speak in a way that they actually understand. Cut out the jargon, all the details, all the data points that maybe you're proud of, but they can't remember or care too much about, and clarify your message, or every other marketing thing is going to fail because it's going to confuse or compete. And so it starts with that foundational piece of understanding your audience and knowing how to speak to them. And so what we always do is craft what we call a core message. And it's just a simple core message that is very clear. And then we test it, like we've all been saying, with your actual audience. So we put it out in the market, or we actually interview people. Our teammates are doing it right now over there in the corner of my office, testing core messages with real donors or potential donors and saying, hey, when I read this to you, does it make sense? Are you confused? Is this clear? So you're actually testing before you go live with it, and then continue to test as you go live with it. So I would say that message is foundational to all the rest of your marketing that you do. So get that right.
Wonderful advice, Jesse. Thank you for that. Ira, any advice on how to optimize marketing on a limited budget when upgrading strategies?
Yeah, I always encourage nonprofits. I feel like we've addressed this a little bit before, but folks will often start the campaign and want it to be perfect or really fully polished, and are afraid to almost let that message go. And when we think of the really successful marketing campaigns over the last decade of things like Ice Bucket Challenge and stuff like that, it was because the organization or the issue sponsoring it kind of let their supporters take that message and run with it and do more innovative campaigns. And so I always encourage you to, especially if you have limited budgets or limited resources, or even a smaller supporter base, really thinking of how you can use them to help promote your marketing message and give them the resources so that they can take the messaging and the campaigns that you're trying to do and help promote it even further. And so there's a lot that can be done to really empower your supporters with smaller budgets and make sure that they're empowered to really take your message to that next level.
Thanks, Ira. All right, Erik, any tips on how to maximize value when upgrading marketing strategies?
Yeah, I mean, Ira had some great ideas there. And, one of the things, and I think it was just taking off some of the things that we've been talking about, like creativity is free in that sense, right? Like you as a group, you as an organization can, that creativity piece does not cost. It just takes time, takes a little bit of commitment, takes, willingness to kind of drop your guard a little bit and throw things on the table. And I think humor is one of the most effective marketing tools. Like it really is. And we are so afraid to use humor in our sector. It's like, because everything we're doing is so serious, but that doesn't mean we can't use a little humor. I love that Black Lab Friday. I think that's a great idea. So it's like humor is the thing that connects people. It allows people to drop their shoulders a little bit. It allows them to say, okay, we're having a little bit of fun with this. Even though you're doing serious work, you can still kind of have a little bit of humor in that. And I think that's something that we could probably all go to bring a little bit more of that in. The other thing, and this kind of goes off of what was being said earlier, is like within your audience base, no matter how big it is somebody in that who, one, would be probably has something super interesting to say. Maybe an influencer, and not like a Kardashian level influencer, but like maybe an influencer within their own circle. Maybe somebody who is super creative. We worked with an organization who had somebody who benefited from their work, kind of grew up, and then became an animator and looped full circle, reached out to the organization and it's like, hey, I would love to do stuff for you. Became, basically all of this creative got produced because the work they'd done changed somebody's life and that person wanted to pay it back. So don't be afraid to especially if you're on limited budgets, reach into your audience, reach into your network and say like, hey, we want to do this or that. Don't be afraid to, you don't have to be perfect. You can ask for help. And I think you might find there's some really great, great solutions, great creativity, great people within the woodwork that would want to help and step forward.
Thanks, Eric. All right. Jason, what would you like to add?
You said limited budget, nonprofit. That's a thing? Okay. It's tough because it's a lot of its mindset, right? Let's face it. Like even if a huge chunk of unrestricted funds came in, like how much of that would nonprofits actually dedicate to marketing, right? It's the mindset of it. Whereas we, like all of us here on the call as business owners, may understand that it may take $10,000 in ad spend to get $20,000 back on a return. Like that's not a mindset that nonprofits have. So it's really tough. And until we've changed that mindset, which is an uphill battle for all of us marketers, right? I think if you are unable or unwilling to do like the legwork that goes into all the unrestricted advertising, ad spend, funds, and grants available for each platform when it comes to marketing, and not just Google, right? But getting those grants or having a consultant to do that, if you're unable to do that, I would say focus in on one platform. I think Eric said it before, like find your audience, see where they're at, meet them there, focus in on one platform. There's a reason that we're not on like all of the platforms. And my guy Sid is in here today. He can drop my LinkedIn. We are all in on LinkedIn. That's our platform. That's where our audience is. And even as a company of like 11 people, right? Like who are professional content creators, like that one platform is where we picked and we're going after that one niche, right? As opposed to spreading ourselves thin. We got to be on TikTok and IG, and like our IG hasn't seen any action in like months, right? To a year. It's all LinkedIn, a little bit on YouTube, and we're slowly regurgitating some content from YouTube on Facebook because people left Facebook. So now Facebook Reels are like kind of coming back, right? So I wouldn't try and spread yourself thin across all the platforms. Like pick that one and go hard after that one where your audience is at.
Thanks, Jason. All right, this is the last of my questions before opening it up to our wonderful audience. I've seen a few questions have already come in, but if you have questions, this is the time to drop them in the questions tab or in the chat. But before I open that door, I want to sneak in my next question. And Eric, I'm going to have you start us off with this one. What key performance indicators should nonprofits focus on when it comes to their marketing, and how can they use the data to refine and optimize their marketing efforts over time?
Yeah, that's a good one. There are more metrics than we can track in the digital marketing space than we could ever humanly leverage. And if you're not someone who's already sort of steeped in this, if like digital marketing is like a quarter or a part of your job, you're going to fire up something like analytics or one of these tools and just go like, do I care about this? What is this thing? So strip it back. Don't get too overwhelmed. Like we often reduce ours to something we call Polaris metrics, which is three things, right? It's basically traffic, like are we resonating? Are people coming in? And then conversion rate. And now a lot of the time that's focused on donations, but maybe it's on an advocacy action, maybe it's on something else, whatever that action is, because it allows you to look upstream and say, okay, I'm getting a lot of traffic, this is great, but they're not converting. So either my message isn't working, my action isn't working, or the traffic I'm bringing in is not my people, are not my people, whatever. But what you get there is like you have a method in tracking conversion rate, traffic conversion rate, and then the last one for us is average gift, because you can basically move those three things, and you'll be able to move a campaign. You'll be able to, if you can move all three of them, you're creating like exponential impact for your organization. But it's also really helpful to understand how people are interpreting what it is you're trying to get them to do, right? So if the traffic's not coming, you have a problem upstream in creative or audience. If the conversion rate's is not happening, well, then maybe it's the traffic, maybe it's the conversion mechanism, maybe the ask's too big. And then if your average gift, if we're focused on fundraising, for example, if your average gift is under what you want it to be, focus on the value proposition. Focus on what it is you're offering people, because sometimes we'll work with an organization like, oh, our campaign it's really underperforming. It's like, oh, well, you're asking for $30. Yeah, but normally people give us 130. I know, but you're asking for 30, so that's what they're giving you. So those three things, from my perspective, can really help shape, make it easy to kind of keep an eye on what you've got going on and look and sort of assess where the issues might be happening, and then from there, there's so many things you could be diving into. The other one I would add to this is blended return on ad spend. So if you're actually doing paid media marketing, don't stress too much on like the return on ad spend in one single platform. Blend them together. They all do different things. So, if you're only in one spot, like Jason was suggesting, great. But if you're across a number of them, then blend it so that you can see how it's, how it's performing totally.
Thanks, Eric. All right, Jesse, over to you. Thoughts on KPIs that nonprofits should focus on when it comes to their marketing and how to use it?
Yeah, that's. I don't have a whole lot to add to what Eric said. I think keep it simple. Don't overwhelm yourself with the data. The one thing I would add is, we see a lot of value in email subscribers, because with the constant changes of social media and the algorithm, you're not going to have as much fluctuation in email. And so, like, as far as you're not going to be impacted as much and go on the roller coaster ride that Meta wants to take you on. So if you're growing your email list over time and you're getting good engagement there, then it's more dependable and you can drive a lot of giving and a lot of results through email, a really great email marketing strategy. We see a ton more value dollar-wise in giving from an email subscriber than we do social follower. So I would say if you're starting out or you're a small nonprofit and you're wanting to just focus on one number in your marketing, I would say just grow that email list and then keep engaging it. And you're going to see results from that probably more than focusing on just about anything else on the digital space.
Thanks, Jesse. Jason, you're up next. Any advice on the KPIs to focus on when it comes to content and how to use it?
Yeah, I think likes and comments are overrated. It just seems to be the indicators that we use a lot of times, right? But the thumbs up is basically useless. Maybe if they hold their finger on the button a little longer and give you a different reaction, then you can start measuring a little bit better because of the time. But I think video watch time is huge. How long people are, as far as video content goes, how long are people engaged? When did they drop off? And one of my favorite creators is one of the biggest creators, I should say, Mr. Beast, is like, you're making videos, cool, like make 100, improve one thing every time, and then start your journey, right? So like understanding where people are dropping off and how long they're engaged, that's a really good indicator for measuring KPIs. And if you're on email, cool, hit them again on social. They might get your email at work, but they might be reminded at home when they're on social again and see you again. So those multiple touch points are important as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jason. Ira, final thoughts on the KPIs to focus on when it comes to marketing and how to use it?
Yeah, I mean, what everybody else here said was right on, and certainly the focus there. Kind of going back to what Eric was talking about, really narrowing it down and focusing on just a few important metrics, especially that conversion rate. To me, that's what it all comes down to. What Jesse was saying, it's, if your goal is to eventually grow your list, your fundraising, like, you need more email subscribers, and so really focusing there. And if you're not achieving that metric, then you're not being successful. And so there are obviously other factors and things like that and other metrics you can look at, but that is your ultimate goal there is, are you getting more more donors? Are you getting more email signups? Are people taking action on your site or signing up for volunteer? Whatever that end goal is for you, that should be the primary focus. And a lot of times analytics platforms actually don't make it that simple for you to track that, even though it's the most important metric. And so it does oftentimes require creating custom conversions or custom tracking in Google Analytics or whatever analytics tool that you use. And so that's typically my advice is don't be distracted by the things they do provide you. Really focus on things that you need to know. And so don't be distracted by things like bounce rate or time on site. They don't really tell you a full story. It's possible your bounce rate might be low because people are finding what they want, doing what they need, and leaving. And so it may not necessarily be a bad thing. And so really just, again, going all in on that conversion, what your end goal is where I always encourage folks to start.
Thanks, Ira. All right, we're officially opening our Q&A portion, and we'll start off with a question from Lori. And Jesse, I'll have you start answering this question. How do you find balance between marketing to the loyal, older generation of donors and market to the younger audience to fill the future pipeline? Any suggestions on how to spread the efforts on time, money, and resources?
Yeah, she gave me the hardest question. No, that's a great question. I know a lot of nonprofits are asking that. I don't think there's a right answer, right? But I would say that because if you shifted all your funds to reaching the new younger audience, you're probably going to start declining in revenue because that older generation is able to give more. They're faithful, they're loyal, they're already lower in your funnel, so they're ready to go. So it's probably more of a smaller percentage of your marketing efforts and budget at first that maybe over time can increase. But I think you just have to make sure you're looking at the full picture of your audience or donor journey, as we call it, mapping that out and knowing, are you able to bring someone in who maybe makes a smaller gift and steward that giver, retain them, allow them to give monthly or give more, and then eventually become a major giver or someone that sticks with you over time. If you're not doing that successfully, you probably can't afford to start asking about the next generation. You need to figure that out and stick with the loyal generation, or you're going to be in trouble. So I would say make sure you have a full audience journey in place that guides people through into a deeper engagement with you. Most nonprofits haven't quite figured that out yet, or you're at risk. Maybe you go get a new givers that give one-time smaller gift, but you don't retain them well. Sadly, the retention rates in the nonprofit sector are not great. And so until you've got that sorted and you're like, hey, my retention rates are great, we've got a great mid-level program, a great major donor program, and we know we're going to take someone and build them for decades of giving with us into more and more, then you got to be careful spending too much on that younger generation. We all want to reach the next generation. We have to some extent. But at the same time, it's a process that probably will take time. I would be careful not to go all in too fast and abandon some of your loyal givers who may be the ones paying all the bills right now, right? So that was just a couple of quick thoughts. Obviously, it's different for every organization depending on kind of your life cycle and your donor base.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jesse. All right, Ira, anything what you want to add?
Yeah, I think Jesse, I definitely agree with a lot of what Jesse said there. I think for me, a lot of the basics for marketing that do speak to both older generations also speak to younger generations. And so I always encourage people to kind of stick with the basics of, in any story that you're telling, in any communication that you're doing, you need that hero. You need the hero and the villain. Presumably your organization's the hero. The villain is whatever's happening. Congress makes a great villain, so do diseases, things like that. But make sure that you're conveying those essential things, using emotion, using humor, providing that call to action. I think is incredibly important when communicating that message, regardless of who you're talking to of younger and older generations. But really going to where they are is what it comes down to. That if you're really trying to attract a younger, different audience, go into different places where you're going to find them. We see that a lot, that people say they want to attract younger generations, but then just continue to work in the same platforms or the same space that they've been working on to attract their current supporters. And so making sure that you're balancing that out, that if you're going after a different audience type, find out where they're going to be and what messages are going to speak to them most effectively.
Thanks, Ira. All right, Jason and Eric, anything else you want to add? Otherwise, I'll have us move on to the next question. Yes, Eric?
Yeah, I was just going to add that, like, when you, I think you can do both. I mean, both Ira and Jason were speaking to this idea, like, or just sorry, that you can create something that is going to resonate across many different generations. Everybody loves a good story, and so if it's a good story, it'll work in a lot of places. The way you can think about how you might target younger demographics at the same time is, if you're setting something up and you're going to put that story out in Instagram or wherever it is, split your campaign in half and target one to your existing audience and target one to a younger audience that you want to see. Spend the same amount, even cut it so it's getting a slightly lesser budget, whatever works for you, but just get the visibility so you can see how those different demographics are engaging for you. And you don't have to make new creative, and just use that, start to gather a little bit of intel on how you might continue to sort of bring new people in, new blood, new lifeblood to the organization, while also making sure that you're definitely not, to Jesse's point, abandoning those people that are most loyal to you right now.
Thanks, Eric. Jason, anything you want to add?
Yes, I won't speak to striking the balance too much because you don't want to leave the people that have been with you. But as far as younger generation, if you can at all possible, spread yourself to that or assign somebody to that. That generation, you're thinking less gala, less traditional gala, and more experiential, more micro event, more micro marketing. I mean, you think about malls, like Amazon can do it faster, cheaper, better, right? And like, what are malls doing now? We have the American Dream, maybe 10 miles from here. It's an experience, right? They're creating an experience because they know that if they don't, they're going to be gone, right? They still may be gone, right? But like, I think that younger generation, if you want to draw them out, it's the more experienced, or even the micro marketing, like maybe find that, be okay with like hitting a small group of 15 to 20 people with that marketing and go hard after that, but be okay with like a smaller result in talking to the younger generation.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jason. All right. I'm actually going to stick with you for our next question. Could you share a successful case study or examples of a nonprofit that revamped its marketing strategy effectively? Any key takeaways?
I could share one of our best video storytelling ones where we created a success story, not created, but told the story of a success story. And they implemented at their gala, which was great because they went from like 570K in one night to 1.1 million and breaking records using that piece, right? But then repurposing and then taking that onto their director of development, brought it to a small family foundation, got a grant, 2 million over 2 years because he was touched by the video. Their executive director brought it to a group of celebrity or one celebrity chef who the relationship had been closed, saw the impact that their culinary school was having, and then just kind of broke down and said, what can we do? Started a brand new fundraising event, brought in 200K its first year, and it's still going. That was just one video repurposed for multiple things. We've even had one attach it to every single grant application that they've applied for. Like, we filled out all the forms. Here's the why. Here's the heart. They're at 750K so far this year, right? So like, there are multiple ways that you can take and repurpose video from what we've seen, and we try and share those as much as possible just to give other people ideas in their fundraising.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing, Jason. I'm going to open it up to the rest of the panelists. Anyone else want to share examples of a nonprofit that revamped its marketing strategy effectively, and what were the key takeaways?
I'll jump in. We have a case study we'd love to share about one of our clients. They came to us with a brand, and we had some hunches that the branding was off and some of their strategy wasn't working. So instead of just saying, "Hey, we think this is wrong, let's do it this way," we did some research, and so we asked, we did some interviews and surveys, and it validated a lot of what we thought, but also revealed some completely new ideas. So out of that, We made recommendations to their board, they accepted those, and then we executed them over the next year. And the key takeaways, it's a really successful campaign. So the key takeaways would be just do some research, validate your ideas. And then we did a pretty big brand overhaul for them. Sometimes your brand is actually like a hidden blocker. A lot of nonprofits, they don't want to invest in a new brand, but sometimes people don't want to give to a brand that doesn't really align with their vibe, right? They're like, I'm not going to stick that sticker on my laptop because it's just ugly. And, I'm not even sure what they do. And so the brand can really, but they're never going to say that to you. So branding is one of those things that's like, no one's going to come to you and say, by the way, your brand is horrible, your website's ugly, so I'm not going to give. They're just going to ignore your emails, ignore your social post, and disappear, right? So I think brand is one of those things that's like it's a hidden blocker for organizations. So we did a complete brand overhaul, and so they had this like sleeping email list and no engagement. With the rebrand, everybody came alive and they were excited to engage, right? It changed everything. And then they had a really small budget, so we did a massive influencer marketing campaign. And because we found so many influencers that were passionate about this cause, they all donated their time and their influence. And we reached over 2 million people on social media in 1 month, just with free relationship partnerships through influencer marketing, with because they didn't have an ad budget, they didn't have a budget to pay the influencers, which we'd recommend if you can. But these influencers, we just said, hey, listen, this is our cause. If you believe in it, would you help us? And we gave them creative ways to do that. And it just blew up, and a lot of them shared. And so I would say the takeaways there is just do your research. Brand may be an issue. And then influencer marketing can be a really cost-effective way to reach a lot of new people really quickly.
That's great. Thanks, Jesse. All right. Unbelievably, the hour is going by so quickly. So we're going to wrap up this portion of the panel so we can stick to our schedule. So sorry if we haven't addressed your question, but please complete the survey that will be dropped in the chat to indicate which panelists you have questions for, and we'll make sure to connect you with them after the session. I've had such a wonderful time hearing from our panelists today, and I'm hoping to get one final piece of insight from them all. And Ira, I'll have you start us off with this question. What do you see as the future of marketing for nonprofits, and how can nonprofits get ahead today?
Yeah, I think we've addressed a lot of this throughout the call today, and just different things, such as like AI, automation, personalization, A/B testing. I think those are all going to be key factors and key players as we move forward. We'll eventually get into a world of augmented reality and virtual reality and things like that we'll need to start playing with in the very near future. But for me, it's definitely utilizing AI and both your efforts to make sure that you're building campaigns and doing it faster and cheaper and easier, but also for your supporters, so that they're getting the information they need in the most concise way. I think that's one thing that AI is even teaching us how to do, is to write and explain things in as simple as possible way and communicate your mission there. So I think that's the big thing. The one thing I'll mention, kind of related to the last question, is we've worked with a lot of clients, especially Friends of the Earth, one of our favorites. I was going to mention as someone who we did lots of small optimization for, and I think that's a key point for the future, is never being happy with your results. You always have people who are coming to your site who may not be converting, and there's always ways you can optimize and tweak those to make sure that you're really getting out in front of the audience or presenting your content in the most effective way. And so doing a lot of little tweaks just to even how you present different words and framing in your site can go a long way. And so that's always the thing that I encourage folks to do, is never be happy essentially with what you have, and always looking for ways to improve and increase that conversion rate and further engage people.
Thanks, Ira. All right, Jesse, over to you. Thoughts on the future of marketing for nonprofits and how to get ahead today?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll keep it short. On the future of nonprofit, I think no one really knows, but I think it definitely is going to include some things we've talked about today: automation, AI, and influencers. They're all going to be a part of that picture. So those are 3 areas I would say, like, go invest, go learn, go grow in, because while they're changing all the time, they're going to be a part of the picture. And so what won't change is nonprofits need to, embrace change, right? Embrace change and innovation. to tell stories, to communicate clearly, to invite people boldly to ask. And relationships, ultimately marketing, fundraising, it all comes down to relationships, whether that's in the mass and scale or one-on-one. So I think focusing on some of those things that won't change, and then the things are going to be a part of the future, would be my recommendation. And then as far as today, one thing you can do today is I'm going to put a kit in the chat. You could go download that, but it's some of our best resources and tools. You're going to get like worksheets and things that help you with your marketing and fundraising, your messaging, all that. So go download that for free at that link. And that's one thing you can do today to grow.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, Erik, how do you see as the future and how to get ahead today?
The thing I see about the future is the same thing that we've been doing the whole time. It's just that now, in theory, we've got more access and better tools to do that, and that is authentic, creative storytelling. The future is the same thing we have now. It is, your organization. I think it was Ira that was saying earlier. There's a villain, there's a hero. There's, every story has this arc, right? You're trying to achieve something. You're trying to get people out of their seats. Whether that's to get up and pull something out of their wallet or get up and join you. You're trying to incite action. You're trying to incite change, and no one's going to get up for a metric. No one's going to stand up for a stat, but they will get off their butts and they will come and they will join you for a very good story that says, "Oh, I'm being part of something." What Ira and Jesse were alluding to earlier is we have some really cool tools at our disposal now, right? And so where that goes in the next couple of years, where that goes in the future, is I think the tools that allow us to tell that story, that reduce the barrier to whipping up a great website or firing up a creative ad or making some imagery. Those things, that's all going to get easier and easier to use. AI is going to allow us to take that, I need to know how to use Photoshop, to I can just ask the computer to sort of do what I need it to do in natural language, and that's the thing that I think is really going to be the big shift for the future. So from my perspective, it's the future is storytelling. It's just going to be enabled. We're going to reduce the barrier. It's going to be easier to tell good stories, and so hopefully the future is really, really creative.
Thanks, Erik. All right, Jason, we want to hear from you as well. What do you see as the future of marketing for nonprofits and how to get ahead today?
Future's scary, man. Well, I mean, there's so much. Like, it was just announced that people can use Bitcoin and ETH as like part of their retirement package, which is crazy, right? So don't be surprised if my business partner is crazy about this stuff. I'm not huge into it, but like, don't be surprised if people are leaving you ETH in their wills for your nonprofit, which is just nuts, right? I addressed a lot of that earlier when talking about moving on to the younger generations, because guess what? That's why I said try and invest a little bit. They are the future, right? And that experiential, those micro events, that micro marketing that's super targeted to certain people or specific people in general, like those, that's the future, right? So if you can tap into the younger generation and what they're looking for, that's where you're going to stay ahead and meet them where they're at. So, I mean, don't put out all the eggs in that basket, but, start thinking about some of that stuff right now. I'll leave you with this. To agree with Erik, good story never dies. There's a way to do it, but 100% story all the time.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Jason. And with that, we have reached the end of our panel. I want to give a big thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights today. And I also want to give a big thank you to our audience. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope you enjoyed yourself and learned something that will benefit the work that you do on a daily basis. All right. That is it for me. Once again, thank you all for joining us and have a nice rest of your day. Bye, everyone.